Good day, my friends. My name is Nikita Butoma, and I was just talking to my daughter and tried to explain her what conscious is. And nevertheless, I have explained to you what conscious is. I try to do it again because it's hard thing to realize. It's a hard thing to catch in our mind because we are not conscious. We only try to imagine we are conscious. I can name it that we are conscious not every moment. It's a part of time. What is the feeling of conscious? Let's imagine we are sitting near the floor and looking through the floor, through the window to the outer space, to the nature, to sun, and we are feeling the outer space. We are feeling the external world. So, in that moment, we are feeling we are existing. We are feeling we exist. And we name it in indefinite terms because we imagine that that feeling is constant. But feeling of our existence is not constant feeling. It's suddenly appears inside us and suddenly disappears. But we are remember only the moments when that feeling is existing. And that is why we expand that time of our feeling, which we name as consciousness, in all time we are living. But the thing is, the most of the time we spend in the name we are living, we spend without consciousness. We are dipping inside the book. We are dipping inside the feeling of the heroes in the screen of our TV, or we are deeply inside our thoughts. In that times we are not existing because our consciousness is not existing. We not exist, or we exist. And in what time the consciousness is existing? Apparently it is the time when we are name us by the name, or maybe somehow we get this name from outside, or maybe it is someone who name us by the name, and the magic is in that time we get the feeling of consciousness. Let's dig inside that phenomena. What is it? It is a simple action. Again, we're sitting near the window and look around and look in the outer space and thinking, I'm existing. What was the cause of suddenly changing our mind from the feeling, from the dipping inside the book, from our thoughts, to the feeling I am existing? We are not known about it, but it was some intervention. It was some word, it was some event that create that feeling. I claim that it is our name, not anything else. How does it work? It works as it is. In our body, the second. So I continue. If in that moment the living creature can be named by the name it recognizes, the first time does not comes at all, does not appears at all for him, because he is not recognize his name as a name, but because of ability of living creature to create the phenomena of looking from inside, from this rectangular shape to the outer world, and that looking gives the creature the feeling of him existing somehow, maybe not entirely feeling. It's not a consciousness. Yes, it's not a consciousness. It's only a feeling of him existing. And again, someone calls that feeling creature in the different parts, in different occasions of his life. That feeling creature, if that creature admires someone who speaks, who spells his name, then he gives attention what was spelling, and he became a memorize it name. And one small distance separate us from the consciousness in that occasion. We have a feeling of looking, only feeling. We have our name, and if suddenly spelling a name becomes us to get feeling better, becomes us a joy, then we can repeat that name again and again and associate with us with whom? With the rectangular shape, who is feeling, who is looking. It is a magic, but the magic is very simple, because imagine that any god calls us to name, and we put our name somehow in our brain and forget about it. But God calls us again and again, and we memorize it, we remember it, and we remember that if any God calls us by that name, it is us whom he calls. But not any God, but our lovers, our children, calls us by that name, because we give that name as our name to him. In that moment we create that magic trick, because if our children, if our wife calls us, then we have the suddenly feeling of joy, and we replace the name of us from the maybe darkest part of our brain to lightest part of our brain. The lightest part when the center of joy is existing. suddenly we feel that the spelling of our name is joyful for us. And the third step, the first step was some God calls us. The second step, we give our name to our dearest, and they call us. And the third part, we call ourselves. We call ourselves because it's joyful. We call ourselves, and in that moment we became the second screen is joyful, is disturbance, and create a sense of looking to outer space. Doing that many times, and get the internal chemical, internal drugs to our blood, we became to forget the naming us. We just name us, but it is not necessary to us to keep that naming in the scope of our mind, in the scope of our attention. We name us inside our neural net, but outside of our scope of consciousness. But because it doesn't need to get attention of it. Because only effect by naming us is to get feeling we are existing. So we get attention to our name in the center of joy. The center of joy is throwing the chemical drugs in our blood. We are feeling joy. We became a second net to be in state ready. Then we create by that state of ready the image, the sense of looking, and so by that sense of looking we perceive the external world with the feeling of looking, of our looking, and with the feeling of our naming us. It is the three components of consciousness. They perceive the external world by the first screen, the creating of sense of looking, and the naming us in our center of joy. In the whole sense of joy, which involves all neural net, maybe 1 second, but it is a whole sense of joy, which appears, which makes us and let us to get that three part of consciousness together. That is consciousness is. Thank you.